So you're in this purgatory.
Yeah.
And then is that when you saw the book in the bookstore?
Towards the end of 2011 into mid 2012, I'd read the book 3 times.
3 times?
Yeah.
What did you order to drink?
Oh, I ordered an old fashioned.
Well, they take the old fashions very serious here.
Look at that.
What do you think of the library?
Big book of cigars right here. Look at that. You come here and you can't help but be creative. My dad was always one that always speak the truth.
Do you think that that influenced your parenting?
I would say the first half of my parenting, when I still lived in Canada, yes. And then something broke, something switched, something just turned off.
We love talking about books that have changed people's lives, like had such an impact that they are different after reading the book. Our special guest today is Brian Munroe. How did the secret letters of the monk who sold his Ferrari change your life? Did you bring your copy?
I did.
Are your highlights in there?
My highlights are not in there because this is the copy I'm leaving.
Oh,
and
well, thank you so much.
You only get a paperback now, so I had to kind of source
Yeah,
another.
that's what we have.
Okay, you got to put, yep.
So thank you. You brought me a book and you brought me some cigars.
Yeah.
And this is a little variety pack from Davidoff. Big fan. So what I have is a selection for you. So we have the one.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If you want. And then this is from a little island out off the coast of Florida.
Just 90 miles from Miami.
Yeah. This is an experience.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do this one, you can take it with you. Wow. And then these are just a lighter snack.
It's one of those. These are the Monte Cristo. Oh yeah, yeah. Nice. I think I'm gonna go with the Monte Cristo.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then I'll do the same.
Yep.
What do you think of the library?
Fantastic. It's just, you come here and you can't help but be creative when you're in the space, right? It just everything from the books and the lighting from.
What did you order to drink?
Oh, I ordered an old fashioned.
Oh, they take the old fashions very serious here.
I can see that. Thank you.
There's been like literal fist fights about whether we do the cherry or not.
Yeah.
Thanks, baby. When you're helping entrepreneurs, what is the common thing that you have to fix?
I usually walk into a lot of stress and anxiety, and it's just, kind of addressing that is the first thing that I have to look at. Process and systems either gives them a headache or they just don't get it. It's wild that I hear people say all the time, well, I'm a visionary. I just don't want to think about that. I can't think about that. My brain doesn't work that way. So, okay, I get that. So we'll work around that.
What is that, or what have you learned about that, Laura? Like, let's say there's somebody who's really good at writing a book and speaking in front of the room, but they're not good at the fulfillment of whatever it is, or workshops and hiring and that sort of thing. What are the gaps that you help them close? Or
I want to find out, first of all, is there somebody on their team that actually is good at that, that they haven't recognized, or they don't realize that, hey, you know what, this person over here is your opposite. That's stuff that you don't like to do. They love to do it. So give them a chance. Otherwise, that's usually then a hole that has to be filled by somebody, or some, hire that out or something like that. So if they do truly want to be on stage, creating the content, delivering the message, but then behind the scenes, they don't want to take care of that, then we have to find somebody that can do that kind of work for them. And obviously I try to look internally first to see, hey, is there somebody that can fill that? Just in all fairness to them and to the organization. I'm thinking about a manufacturing company right now where the CEO, he was having some system problems in that. And he was that type of person that just loved to be out there, loved to be, with his people and all that kind of stuff. And I went to one of his plants one day, started going around and talking to the people there, and found out, you've got some really talented people. Do you know about this? And some of it he did not. And just simply by recognizing that and then telling them and then watching him, give them a little bit more responsibility. Well, a couple of things happened. One, he got what he was looking for, but the person, all of a sudden they're being entrusted with more, and there was no immediate pay raise or anything like that. It was just, I'm trusting you with more, and then you're doing more. Thank you.
And all ships rise in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This, the person I'm thinking about in my mind right now, they weren't necessarily driven by money, but as soon as you told them what a good job they're doing in front of others, whew, they lit up.
So you grew up in Canada?
I did.
What part?
Peterborough, Ontario. So hour and a half east of Toronto. Stayed there till I was 22 and then into Ottawa for 18 years.
What kind of childhood did you have there? Were you like the typical Canadian, like you played hockey on the pond in the back? It looks like your teeth are all there. So
they are, yeah. I never
took
took
hockey.
My dad always made sure I had the full helmet on. But yeah, I started playing when I was 6 and played till 16. And even then, at around 14, 15, it's getting very competitive. And that's when I kind of knew my hockey career was coming to an end rather abruptly.
It was no longer social. It was very serious.
It was very serious. And my goals scored from the first 10 years was like 25% of what the average kid was doing in a season.
Making the Hall of Fame?
No, it was bless my parents for just putting up with me for all that.
What did your parents do?
So my father is a long haul truck driver.
Oh, wow.
And interestingly enough, for probably when I started grade 6, grade 7, around that age, he would drive into the U.S. So he was what in Canada they call the U.S. trucker. So he would take loads from Canada and he would be stateside the whole time. So at a young age, I started traveling into the U.S. with him. I got to experience, being there. And I can remember being 16 years old. I got my newly minted Ontario driver's license. We crossed the border. He would drive. He's like, I'm getting tired. I need you to drive. Dad, I'm not licensed. Nah. You just show him your Canadian license. You'll be fine. Just keep it in the lanes and, just silly things like that. But I got to experience a lot of the U.S. as a young teen just by going with him.
Were there any conversations with your dad when it was just you and him in the truck like that you remember that influenced you?
Yeah, I would say my dad was always one that always speak the truth. He was a real guy about speaking the truth. Those conversations come up. We would have conversations about school and stuff like that, and he was really back then he was really big on, like, if you told a lie. There's 2 things he really didn't love. He didn't like if you told a lie. The other thing he didn't like is if somebody flipped him the bird. Those are the 2 things that would just drive him, like just nuclear. Yeah.
Did you ever flip him the bird?
No, I never did.
Yeah.
No, I had seen what happened if you did.
Well, what did your mom do?
So my mom was for a lot of years the secretary of the church that we went to. And then when I was in high school, she bought an appliance repair business.
It's random.
Yep. Very random. Yep. And ran that business for probably 15 years. Yeah. Before she decided to pack it in. Now they're both retired.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah. Brother, 2 years younger than me. Sister, 2 years younger than him.
What would you say was the thing that you took away most from your dad?
I would say just respect. Be respectful to people. My dad was always respectful to people. It didn't matter who anybody was. I never understood it when I was young too. There was times when he would do things, go out of his way to help somebody or something like that, and I never got it. And I can remember kind of feeling almost embarrassed sometimes at times. It's like, oh, Dad, why are you doing that? But he would just do that, and it's just something I've kind of learned from him. No, along with the, always tell the truth and don't flip anybody the bird.
Have you tried the drink?
I am about to right now. Just put that in there. Yeah. Yeah, they do a good job.
Do you think that influenced your parenting?
I would say yes. to a point. There's a reason why that book came into my life at a point where I was at. And so I would say for the first part, I would say the first half of my parenting when I still lived in Canada, yes. And then something broke, something switched, something just turned off.
And was that for the better?
No.
No? For the worse?
Yeah. I just started to spiral into a dark path where I thought production was all that mattered.
And by production, you used to mean making money?
Yeah. Just go and do anything to do.
What do you think was the driver of that?
I've thought about it, and I don't really know because it was not the way my parents were.
Well, you didn't grow up poor. You're middle class, right?
Yeah. You're middle class, but I would say we didn't have any very great financial training or financial example. My parents would take good care of us and things like that. But, probably the best example I would give is when we were teenagers, they decided that they would go into a lot of debt to put a pool in. But their reasoning is, I'd rather have you and all your friends at our house knowing you're all having a great time than you just out somewhere else.
Because they were worried you might become a Crip or a Blood or something.
I don't know.
You're trying to gang.
Whatever the Canadian version of that is.
But there wasn't a real like for me, growing up a missionary's kid and living on faith and wearing donated clothes and like kind of the humiliation of it all was there was just a switch that said I'm not going to be poor, and then that became my North Star for a long time in an unhealthy way too, I think. But there wasn't something like that for you. It just was. It was just the default setting that happened.
I think it was just the default setting that kind of happened. And then I can remember when I first got married, going through a stretch where money was extremely tight, and then it got a little bit of taste of it. And I can remember one day looking at my wallet, seeing $100 bill in my wallet, saying I'm never going to carry less than $100 cash with me ever again.
How long until you didn't have $100?
Well, that was coming out of, I would say from that point onward, I was okay to do that.
You never regressed?
I'm trying to think. No, I don't think I did. And sometimes,
that's great.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if that's part of what was starting to go in my head.
What were you doing then for work?
So what had happened is I had just left retail sales management. Great training, but didn't really pay. And I had just started a contract with a telecom company doing project management. I didn't know I was doing project management at the time until someone explained to me later, but that's what I started to do. And all of a sudden I started making contractor consultant money. And that's when the shift happened. That's when all of a sudden, in a couple of years, I was moving into a different home and things were progressing.
And how old are you?
At that time, I am 25.
And how many kids do you have by 25?
By 25, I have my daughter. In a couple of years, and by 29, I have my son.
And by 29, are you doing pretty good?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah. By the standards of the time. By that time, I'm living in Ottawa. I'm working for Nortel Networks, who's obviously no longer in business. But at that time, I think in a city of 900,000 people, almost 70,000 people reported to that campus. So it was huge. And during that time also, that part of just outside of Ottawa, known as Canada, was dubbed Silicon Valley North. Everybody was there. Nortel was there. Mitel was there. Lucent, Alcatel, all the big players were there. And people were switching departments within the organization for $10,000 signing bonuses within the same kind of VP group, just switching a department. It was ridiculous.
Sounds like chaos.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. But
so you're driven by money. You must have married young. Mm-hmm. How old were you when you married?
I was 23.
23?
Yeah. And had dated for 6 years. Met in high school.
So you were serious.
Yeah, for a while.
So then you have your second kid. What happens after that?
Second kid comes along. And I think things are going well, but that's when the real production mindset kicked in. Things in the business were doing We're doing pretty good. I was,
Was that sparked by turning 30?
No, I've never been one to really put my age to something like that, like turning 30, turning 40. No, I've never been like, oh, I'm 30 now. I've never been like that type.
Man, how good are these cigars?
Right? These are fantastic.
It's not too big of a commitment either.
No. But this is a good one. Been to the factory where these are made, so I'll digress for 2 seconds. Back in 2018, I had probably my 4th or 5th cigar ever. First one was on our wedding night with Stacy and I wanted to be kind of cool. We had a nice dinner, and I'm like, let's go outside. We're in South Beach. We got married in South Beach, and I said, let's go outside and get a scotch and a cigar. She's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I want to do it. Nah, I shouldn't have done that. Fast forward 2018, I have another cigar, and I actually enjoyed it, and I get fascinated with them, and I started reading a little bit about them, and I sign up for a cigar sommelier school, and I become a cigar sommelier, and then I'm invited to the master's program, which is training in the Dominican for 4 days, and then it's part of the Pro Cigar Festival tied on afterwards. So after the training, Stacy flies into Santiago, and we go to the festival. So we've been to Davidoff, and so I'm probably about one of 12 master cigar sommeliers in the U.S., and two of us are in Vegas, and he's a good friend of mine now. So
what's the test like for that?
The test was sitting in front of the gentleman who is the master blender of La Hora for 35 years, and we're sitting semicircle, and everybody's given the same cigar, and we light up and we start smoking, and we get into about the 1/3 point of it, and then he just looks at each one of us and asks, now the bar you have at home, you have three thirds. What would you pair this cigar with? And we had to describe what we would pair it with and why. And based on our answer, that was the test.
Yeah, that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
You have your daughter.
Yep.
You're focused on making money.
Focused on making money. Things are going, well, I thought things were going great until things were not going great. I was doing a lot of traveling. So in the later 2000 years, I think from about 2006 to 10, I was doing a lot of speaking engagements on troubled projects, rescuing and recovering troubled projects. Not quite at the organization stage yet, focused more on the projects. Why is your project off the rails? Why is it behind schedule? Why is it over budget? Why is the vendor pissed off with you? Where's the misalignment happening? So I'm doing a lot of talks on that. I'm traveling a lot. And so I'm traveling a lot, making good money, and then slowly, without realizing it, basically just disconnecting is the best way I can describe it. Disconnecting from my wife at the time, disconnecting from my kids at the time, disconnecting from anything up here. We had basically, when we got married, that was kind of almost the last regular church attendance we ever did, or any kind of religion. And so I was just disconnecting, and I was starting to become really unhealthy. Started packing on weight, all of that stuff. And then,
why is that? Did it sneak up on you, or was there an event?
In my mind, I can't come up with an event. So I have to think it just snuck up on me. I just slowly, just hotel after hotel, conference after conference, just.
Like, I used to have a personal assistant
Yeah.
that would load my refrigerator with like what I wanted, because if I was home Saturday, Sunday, I didn't want to go shopping and dry cleaning. So
that's true, yeah.
He would do all that. And there were weeks where he would, everything that he put in my fridge on Friday, he would throw away the next Friday. And I was home like 2 days a month for a while on the road. And you start to lose. It's the same thing when you're in a band and you tour. You start to lose perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the kind of the same thing for me, as I was fixing businesses on commission.
Okay.
And so, the most important part of it was the beginning. So you had to be very hands-on to create momentum.
Yep.
and you couldn't leave that to chance.
Yeah.
Once they had momentum, you could back off a little or put one of your people in there.
Right.
But I was the only one with the alchemy to create the momentum.
And then when you back off, you're now creating momentum with somebody new.
Yeah.
Because this just keeps...
And you get addicted to that.
yeah.
Like you feel like a cowboy that comes riding in on a horse and you like get in a gunfight and you're a mechanic for this one thing. But this one thing, nobody else can do that thing. Right. Nobody else would do that thing, right? Yeah. In a sense. Yeah. It had to be similar for you. Like
it was. And it was also to the point that I used that. That's what allowed me to write my work visa to come into the US when I decided to leave Canada. You know, when you leave Canada and you come in to the US, if you're coming in under a TN work visa, you have to, there's certain categories, first of all. You can't just, I can't be a soccer coach and come into the US as a soccer coach. There's only certain categories. So management consultant is one of the categories. But you have to prove that what you do, you're kind of an authority in the space, or nobody else is. You're not going to necessarily threaten.
It has to be special.
It has to be special. So I did that on Project Rescue, and
it's the same thing going that way, by the way.
That's what I've been told. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to just prove it, and that's at that time in my life. That's what I did.
So it just snuck up on you, and then what
did.
happens?
It snuck up on me.
When did you become aware of it?
I would say it was towards 2009, rolling into 2010. I realized that something wasn't quite right, but I just didn't know what. By the fall of 2010, I knew right away there's parts of me that had been missing life, and then it just started to kind of fall apart at that point. I remember on one of the last meetings I had with my ex before leaving the country, she said to me, she goes, we probably should have separated, 8-9 years ago.
Ooh.
Yeah. Among some other words, but, other choice things. But, when I think back that far, I'm not seeing it back that far. But of course, I'm the one on the road. I'm the one doing all the doing. I wasn't the one being at home and trying to raise kids and take care of school stuff and all of that. I just thought, hey, they've got money to do what they want. The kids were in private school, all that stuff. And I thought that's what my job was to do. Totally just didn't realize that there's this whole other side of that. And
were you drinking a lot? Or was it mostly eating?
It was both.
It's hard to,
it was cocktails and wine and stuff like that. It wasn't a lot of I've never wanted to go out and just get hammered, or I wouldn't do that. Never had a problem with it, but it was steady. It was steady enough that it started to pack weight on.
Well, yeah, because you usually don't work out when you're on the road that much, right. And so you'll have a couple drinks,
yep.
And yeah, it's only a couple, but then you're not working out,
yep.
And it's how you get to sleep.
Yep. Or it's a couple of cocktails, and then it's a glass of wine with a steak or something, and then you're like, okay, that's all.
So it comes to a head. You have that conversation. How do the kids play into that?
I'll back up a little. Before that conversation, I started seeing someone towards the end of 2010, and I also knew that my wife at the time was doing similar. So that's how I kind of knew this was messed up, because I'm not the type of person that, had things been really great, there wouldn't have been an opportunity there to even do that. And
how did you know she was seeing somebody?
I had a couple people tell me, and kind of.
And you never asked her?
I didn't ask her until right at the very end.
Because you didn't want to know?
I don't know whether I didn't want to know. I kind of already knew. There was enough. These people that are telling me, I trusted them already. So.
How did it feel?
Numb.
Yeah.
You're kind of pissed off, and then you take a step back and you're like, but wait a second. I'm not happy either. And, I should have manned up. Really. Ultimately, I should have manned up and ended it.
I'll tell you, that describes my situation, is manning up. I didn't man up.
Oh, I didn't either.
And then it just became passive aggressive in a way.
Yep.
Where it's like, well, she's doing it, you can.
Yep.
It's and
Yep.
yeah. Back to your dad's thing about
Yep.
the truth. The truth was very
Oh,
far from my reality.
yeah. And massive guilt during that time. And all during that time, I would say the end of 2010, right through 2011, right into towards the fall of 2012, I did not talk to my parents or my siblings.
Because of shame?
I have to, looking back on it now, I'd have to say, yeah, it has to be that.
How are you doing financially through all this?
I was okay.
What are
It was
divorces
still,
like in Canada
so
financially?
they can actually they can be rough, but but there's a lot more positive pictures on them than there are negatives. Like, I will say, I will give my ex credit on that. Like, yeah, we did the typical fighting over certain things and, sticking it to each other once in a while. But ultimately, I bet you all total, neither one of us spent more than $5,000 to divide everything, because I was on a mission to leave the country because the person I was seeing lived in the US. So I wanted out. She wanted certain things, and I was willing to say, yeah, you can just have that. And it went kind of back and forth. In Ontario, you have to be legally separated for a year before you can file for a divorce. And even when it came down to that paperwork, we both mutually agreed to backdate that. We're like, yeah,
Move it
let's
forward.
just move it forward. Let's just put this date on it. And that was fine. The only time things got a little weird was when the kids were involved.
How old are the kids at this point?
So the kids are 14 and 10.
So how do you tell them?
I don't think I ever told them, but they knew. So she must have said something. I remember telling them, though, that I was leaving, like leaving Ottawa and that. But I don't remember telling them, hey, yeah, we're not.
Have you talked to him since how that affected him?
I have not actually asked them that.
No.
No.
Can you kind of tell just by your fatherly instinct?
I think it bothered my daughter a lot more.
Which makes sense, right?
She was the oldest one, and she went through some times where she blamed me, and there was periods of time where we weren't talking for a while, and I had to give her space. And my son went through a rough period as well too, and I don't know whether I've never actually asked him if some of that rough period had to do with not having two parents around the whole time or not, but he ended up basically getting kicked out of his house in Canada for a while and had to live with us in the US for a bit.
How old was he?
He was 15 because he celebrated his 16th birthday with us. We were living in South Florida.
And he needed a father figure?
I would have liked to said that, but then he got into Florida and he did okay for a little bit, but then he started backsliding into his his ways. And I was doing a big contract in Georgia, middle Georgia, and I saw an opportunity. Hey, let's leave the South Florida lifestyle. Let's move to the Bible Belt. Let's move up to the middle of Georgia. And so we did. And of course, he was not happy with that. And 3 weeks after moving, we woke up one morning and he was gone.
It's 16?
Yep. He basically called an Uber, middle of Georgia. He called an Uber, went 100 miles up to Atlanta, hopped the plane back down to Fort Lauderdale to be with his friends for a bit. And I said, hey, I'm your sponsor here in the US. You're Canadian. You can't stay. You got to make a choice. You either have to come back or you have to go back to Canada. He chose to go back to Canada. And I can remember but 3 or 4 days after he arrived back in Canada, I had a conversation with him, and it was probably one of the hardest conversations I've ever had with him, because I remember telling him it was like a March or April time frame. And I'm like, look, if you're going to have to sleep outside, at least make sure you do it under a bridge so you don't get any dew.
What?
Yeah.
Because mom wouldn't take him back?
Mom would not take him back. Now, she did end up getting him into an Airbnb for a few nights. That's so at least he wasn't sleeping outside. As much as I wanted to help, I really couldn't from where I was at, nor was I really in a position mentally to do it. I was still, upset that he left. And he ended up basically getting back with somebody he had known, a gal he had met earlier before he left Canada. And she was an angel. Her and her family flipped him.
Really?
Yeah. He is 180. He works for a bank now. He's like, yeah. Wrote himself out of high school, put himself back into college, did a Canadian college / university program, a dual program, graduated from that.
Are they married?
They're not married yet, but
Do they have kids?
They don't have any kids, but they have just bought their first house that'll be finished build in March.
Wow.
So they're pretty.
So
both the kids are doing amazing.
during that time that you didn't talk to your parents, was it your dad you were worried about talking to, or was it both of them?
I think it was everybody, because I shut out my parents, my brother, my sister. I shut them all out.
For like 3 years.
Nah, about 2.
So
Yeah.
where's the low? Where's the bottom?
So the bottom
Does the bottom happen in Georgia?
The bottom for me happens in January of 2012. So January 2012, I am in the U.S. and I am on a date, and we're having a great time. And she just says, "Enough. You've got to go back to Canada and figure your shit out."
What was prompting that?
I was leading this double life, I would say. I was coming into the U.S. and being.
Is this pre you talking to your wife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is just when separation had started. Actually,
So the girlfriend is feeling like this can't go any further until you deal with the wife.
Absolutely.
And so she drew a line.
She drew a big line, big hard line.
And that was the bottom for you?
Going back and then realizing that I have to man up now. I've got to figure out what I'm going to do in Canada. She's not talking to me anymore stateside. I know in my heart that's who I'm to be with, without a doubt. I've known that for a long time, but I've just been lazy and weak
And on the
and
fence.
not on the fence, but weak on the fence. Like trying to.
Man up. Yeah.
So that was, for me, that was the hardest part, because it wasn't a matter of, for instance, in the book, towards the end of the book, he fixes his relationship with his wife. Well, for me, it was, I need to fix my new relationship, because that's where my future is. So that's that part of the book. That's what it was speaking to me about, that relationship. The other one I knew was gone, and I knew that by that time we had both known we really should have been split long time ago. We grew apart and we're different people. But I was chicken shit. I kept saying, I don't think my kids are gonna, they're not gonna love me if I leave. And she's like, no, they'll still love you, but you got to go figure your shit out. That's what I did, and she wouldn't talk to me.
So you're in this purgatory.
Yeah.
And then is
months.
that when you saw the book in the bookstore?
I had saw the book. I think when I got to that point, it was on my second read of the book. Towards the end of 2011 into mid 2012, I had read the book 3 times. That was
3 times?
Yeah, that was the second.
How many books have you read 3 times?
The only other book that I've actually read that many times is another one of Robin's books, The 5 a.m. Club.
Oh, really?
Yep. In The 5 a.m. Club, I've read it 3 times and listened to the audio 4 times, just because the person that narrates it does a fantastic job and the lessons are solid in it.
Wow.
And for me, they're a reminder, so I go back to that one. But that one 3 times. And it was that second time, the second read, I'm going through there and realizing very quickly.
So the first time it didn't have the effect that the second time did?
Correct.
Because your situation had changed.
Yeah, I was still trying to play the fence, right? I was still.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
How the same book has a different effect when you're in a different point in your life.
Yep. Yeah, I was still on the fence, kind of in Canada, doing my thing, going to the soccer games, kind of being dad a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, showing up, but, arguing all the time, grumpy, working late, all this stuff.
Maybe feeling sorry for yourself a little?
Oh, absolutely I was. And then I would roll in for another speaking engagement in the U.S., we would connect in the US, and I just felt like as soon as I crossed the border, it's like I could be myself.
That's
And then I started realizing, well,
America.
Yeah, America. Woo. But then I'm like, well, then I started realizing I don't know who I am anymore. Because I spent 30, by the time like 38 years being
numb.
this person, and I'm coming here and I'm feeling a whole different way. I'm a different person. But is this the genuine me, or was that one, or what?
Yeah.
Who's
So you'd read the book already. Did you know that the book was the answer and that you needed to read it again? Like you're like, I got to go back to this. This is what I need.
I don't think it hit me like that. I just remember going back, seeing the book again, and going, there were some lessons. I need to read this again. There was an emotional attachment to it. That's the best way to say it. There was an emotion to it. I didn't really know why I needed to read it again. There was just a draw to it. And I read it again. It's interesting because it's like the second of that. It's like the second book. It's not even the first one, right? It's
Have you ever talked to Robin about it?
Not personally about that book. I did tell him I was going to talk about it here. And there has been a couple other things that I've read of his recently, that I was doing some coaching with somebody, and I used one of his principles, and it really just turned this person in such a positive. I reached out and I said, I've got to share this with you.
What was the principle?
The person was dealing with PTSD, and it was just a principle of making, it's similar to what's in here, but making the small changes, but making changes that will add up over time to something greater. And so I just started working with the gentleman and said, hey, why don't we just make a small change in one of your habits? Okay, we did it. And then we did it again and again and again. And then a month later, he's like, yeah, this is really working. So I just thought I'd reach out to Robin and let him know that. So
you go back to the book. What's
go back to the book.
First thing that like hit you going back to it?
Principle number one, the whole thing of
get off the fence.
Yeah, get out there. Being authentic.
Oh, okay.
Being authentic, and then
what is his definition of authentic, or how do you get there?
It's just being who you really are. Like, don't.
What did that mean to you at the time, though?
Well, to me, it meant figuring out, is the Canadian version of Brian who's the real Brian, or is it the guy that wants to come to America? is that really the Brian? So that really got me thinking, well, who am I?
And then was the answer in between?
No, the answer was pretty clear, because I can tell you, like, I've been, 2012 is when the end of 2012 is when I came into the US. And the first times my kids came to visit after I had moved, they went to Stacy and they said, Dad's a totally different guy. He used to yell at me. He used to get angry. You could see he get all red and his blood, like he's totally different. And then that's when I started to realize that is actually the true me. I'm not this rage monster that I was. I was pretty bad. So that, when I look back on it now, that's one of the things that it is tough, because then I feel like, why wasn't I like that before?
Oh yeah.
Well, that you're like,
can't. The good news is you learned.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you can do. So what is that recipe to becoming authentic?
I think it's has to do with not hiding anymore behind anything, any kind of mask that people like to wear, any kind of facade. It's just, hey, this is me. This is who I am. Love me or not. I think that too many people are trying to impress other people, and I think that when I was in Canada and I was starting to, be that person, there was people I was trying to impress, and I realized that I don't need to. And it was also just looking at what felt more comfortable for me.
And is that humility?
A little bit.
What are the other ingredients? Like if it's a cup of humility, what else is in that cake?
transparency in communication. I used to always kind of beat around the bush a little bit. Now it's
Straight line.
straight. Transparency in communication, learning to listen for what's not necessarily being said, like just and trying to put yourself into somebody else's shoes for a moment when they say something, and get curious as opposed to getting angry. Like we get angry sometimes really fast. It's like, well, wait a second. Why don't I just ask myself a couple questions of curiosity first, and then I'll see if it's even justified that I need to get upset. Half the time it's not. Because half the time if you ask yourself the question, well, why did that person just say that? But if you think about it for a minute, usually you can come up with a pretty good answer. So those were some of the things for me, just being transparent, being open, honest. Back to what my dad would teach me, no more lying. Because, for years, it was just a big lie. It got to the point where, some of these visits in the U.S. were not associated to a speaking engagement. So there was lying, cover-up stuff, all that stuff that just makes you feel icky.
Yeah.
When you're doing that. But then I would come here and we'd be on a date or something, and I would just be like super relaxed. All of a sudden, just like, whoa. It's like this massive weight. But after a while, she called me on it. You got to go figure that stuff out, because you coming here, the super weight, while you're still kind of hiding.
Yeah.
You're right.
Which just shows you her level of self-esteem that,
Yep.
she wasn't willing to accept being second fiddle, which is good, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 She had
boundaries.
Yep. Yeah. She had a short marriage, and then raised our oldest as a single mom for years. All the years while I was doing that, she was single mom. So now we're a blended family. So our oldest is 30, married, and we have 3 grandkids.
That's awesome.
6, 4, and 1. Yeah.
What's the second lesson in the book? So being authentic's one.
Yeah, being authentic is one. One of the other ones that stood out to me is just being willing to address and conquer fears. Because going back to Canada and trying to man up was scary. And so I'm going back and I'm attempting this really scary thing. And she's not talking to me anymore. It was like, don't text me, don't call me, like nothing. End of January. And I had to do something that was scary, and I still failed. I did not get it right.
In what sense?
In the sense that it was the middle of 2012, and I had just been working with a company in Wisconsin, and I boarded a flight to head back to Canada, and I get my Dear John letter in an email. She manned up before I did. I'm like, okay. So I'm got, a flight to Chicago to Ottawa to read this email a bunch of times and figure out what that's going to mean. And yeah.
So she knew you were coming back.
Yeah. Because I had, at that time we were doing one of those, hey, we're living together, but not together.
And she just kind of verbalized.
Yeah. She said, no, we're now done with this completely. No more of this. I want you kind of out of the house, and, I don't want you to take the house away from the kids, and just all, the stuff that we had to work through. And a lot of it wasn't really unreasonable, especially because of where I wanted to go. I didn't want to be in Canada anymore. I wanted to leave. So it made some of that actually easier. I just regret now not being the
first one.
The first one, yeah.
What does he say in the book about that?
We like to spend too much of our time in what's comfortable and familiar. And while I wasn't comfortable anymore in Canada, it was still way too familiar. Way too familiar. And that's what was just keeping me back. And you're not going to stretch, you're not going to grow, you're not going to do anything until you step out of that. And most times stepping out of that is scary for a lot of people, what you do. So, was I comfortable? No, it was horrific.
But it was routine.
It was routine. It was like familiar. It was like, oh, okay, I get this. It's, going to the same place for dinner by myself, going that kind of stuff, seeing the same friends once in a while. It was just so routine.
Any other big takeaways
from the book itself? There's a couple of the ones that have hit more, I wouldn't say more recently, but kind of after that, is you get in there and he talks about living a life of kindness, that we need to be kind. We need to be willing to learn from people. That, that old adage that I can learn from anybody. I can learn a lesson from a janitor if I'm the CEO of a company. Like we've, usually see memes about that kind of stuff online and things like that. That whole idea that I can learn from people by showing just genuine kindness. The other big takeaway, once I was on what I'd call a recovery path, was the idea of the small incremental changes, positive steps forward will equal or add up to big shifts down the road. And then one that I still struggle with, even to this day, is just, the idea of you can't loving people. I'm not going to say loving yourself because I was on Tuesday's call when we were talking about the self-love love conversation, but loving people and just for who they are and that, I still struggle with that. I get judgy and I don't like, there's times when I'm judgy and then I step back from it. I'm like, I didn't have to be like that. Especially if it's somebody I don't know, if it's in the public, maybe this morning, going through TSA, I've taken the belt off. And I'm still setting the alarm off. And my pockets are empty, except I have business cards now that are on poker chips with a QR code and everything like that. Well, I didn't know that inside of a poker chip, there is a little bit of metal. And I'm getting a little bit agitated by the fact I'm going back and forth. They're like, well, what do you, is it the shoes? We take the shoe, all this stuff. And I get through and it's all done. And the first thing Stacey said to me, she goes, were you still nice to them though? I'm like, I could have been nicer. That kind of stuff.
You could have requested the cavity search.
Well, I was getting close to, I said to her, I was close to asking for the pat down.
There's nothing more humiliating than TSA. And they treat you like a 5-year-old kid. You feel like you're back in trouble.
And it was fairly quiet until that point in the airport. And then both lines are like backed up because I'm the guy going in and out.
Yeah,
and she's already through.
That one will test you.
She's already through and watching this going on and shaking her head. And I'm like, yeah. So I have to work on that one. They kind of, I see them hand in hand, the kindness and the loving people and that. I still have to, I get too judgy a lot of times. I look at somebody or I still like to yell at people when I'm driving. I don't know. It doesn't, sometimes I think it makes me feel better, but it probably really doesn't.
Yeah. I've worked on that one a lot. I've definitely well, I wouldn't say that I'm finished, but I've made a lot of progress in reprogramming my automatic pilot.
Yeah.
And I think that the realization that most people just want belonging and acceptance.
Yeah.
And the people that are the rudest are the ones that need it the most. And there's just a lot of empathy in that.
Yeah. And I've read stuff about that recently and it's so true. It's and you forget that the person that's the rudest to you is probably the person that's hurting the most in the situation.
And it's automatic to meet them with resistance.
Yep. And it's easy. That's an easy reaction.
Yeah, it's unconscious almost.
Yeah.
You just
taking a step back and just kind of being, just bringing it down a little bit, being nice, that takes work. So still working on that one. And then just the whole idea of being present in a relationship. That was the one thing though that I, end of 2012, things are shifting, and I just vowed to myself, I'm never going to disconnect in a relationship like that ever again. And so that was one thing that I had to, I came to terms with. I made it daily part of my life. I like to think I'm still succeeding in that.
You made it a priority.
I made it a priority. But even as close as 3 years ago, it was costing me though, because I was so focused on that and making sure that, work and my relationships and everything are going good. I was still disconnected in spirituality and mindset, and I was almost 300 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I had to make a shift and realize, okay, let's just take a step back for a second. There's our body, there's our mind, our spirituality, there's our relationships, and there's our business. There's 4 dimensions. I'm not one-dimensional or two-dimensional. I got 4 dimensions going on right now. I need to be watching and balancing and leveling up on all of them through just daily habits. And that came from the 5 a.m. club. The idea of just get up, elevate your morning, elevate your life, get up, do certain things to get started, make them a habit. And that's been a game changer.
That's great.
So
What is your wristband? It says live by a
code.
What's that mean?
So live by a code is the name I use for a coaching program that I do with men, specifically on those 4 domains. And it's just the idea of we have to stand for something. And then code, I break that down. I just basically, the C is consider your possibilities of what you want to do in your life. O, organize those domains. D, design your version of a have-it-all lifestyle. By E, eradicating scarcity and working towards abundance in those domains.
Oh, that's great.
I just, so some of the coaching I was mentioning, that the gentleman with the PTSD was taking him through that kind of program.
And so it's you just coach men?
Yeah, I'm not doing it as much now because I've had a bit of a shift, and I've felt that I've been kind of called or told to shift a little bit towards business owners, entrepreneurs that are in a spot where I found myself, where I thought production was everything, and I was so focused on business problems, the stuff that was on fire, that I was ignoring all the rest of the stuff, the family, the mindset, the body. And so now what I'm looking to do is just, work specifically. Let's figure out these organizational challenges. Let's fix the systems or the process or the talent or whatever is needed here, so that we can get that stress and anxiety down, because I need you to see that there's other areas of your life. And then these same companies, if they're on a path to exit, or if they're on a path to growth, especially if they're on a path to growth, they're like, okay, in 3 years, I want to be this, this, and this. And we start working towards that. It's like, great. This leadership team, who do they all need to be as people to still be the leaders of your new vision? So I really started to blend that concept in with the corporate, fixing the corporate challenges.
That's a great.
We'll talk about leveling up as structure. People on one day, and we'll be, talking SWAT and SIPOC the next day. Next day.
Have you written a book?
I have not yet.
Why not?
I don't know. I haven't yet. The only thing that I've come close to.
Is it on your radar?
It's been on and off my radar for a number of years.
It seems like that would do 2 things. One, it'd be really fun, but it would be a great way to communicate with people.
I think I would find that if I tried it right now, it'd be too textbooky, and I need to figure out a way to get where my heart's going at as well too. It's not just about systems and process. It's also about people, and so I'd have to figure out where I could hit it. I bet
I can help you with that.
I'd appreciate that. Closest I've come recently is I basically wrote my own version of a business operating system. I studied Traction, Empire, Pinnacle, Systemology, and Get Scalable. I went through all of them and realized every single one of those authors, programs, companies, they're all speaking best practices and things that are in all kinds of books. everywhere. Everyone's talking about it in different flavors all over the place, but they packaged it in their voice for their audience. And I thought, well, I could do that. And so I did. I put together a program, and now I'm looking to.
How are you getting the clients?
Well, I'm just starting now. So I've just, within the last month, I created a funnel for that particular program to show people what it's like. And now what I'm doing is I'm approaching companies that look to help other companies either scale or exit.
There's that exit thing is a big business.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I'm finding some traction right now in that, because my dad wanted me to explain it to me the other day. And I said, okay, Dad, here's, let me break it down for you. I said, I'm like a general contractor that works with a select few realtors for their clients. They're trying to get higher value to sell the house. The realtor says, you got to rip that carpet out. You got to put hardwood in. And I know a guy. I said that. He's like, oh, okay, now I get what you're doing.
Yeah, you're the mechanic.
I said, I'm the mechanic. I'm the operator. I'll go in and I'll do that. And I use the system to kind of get them thinking of what needs to be done. And then we discover where the holes are. So if I get into an organization and they got deep financial problems, I'm going to look for a partner that specializes in that. I'll cross it at the 100-foot level, but if the problem is at the 10 or the 1-foot level, I have to get somebody that's just focused solely on that in there. The other idea I've thought about writing on comes back from my past working in trouble projects and realizing that there are a lot of people out there that are assigned to work on a trouble project, and it's not their fault or their problem that the project's in trouble. But how would that feel going home every night and you're consistently part of a losing team? What's that doing?
There's probably a big audience for that. And one audience would be the project managers, because that's a whole cult in and of itself.
Yeah.
We've hired project managers a couple times, and that's a gift.
Yep.
But they're all project managers always seem like they're trying to improve and learn.
Yep.
Like they're, and so I think you'd have two audiences for that probably.
Yeah. And project management has been the core of what I've done. Of all the things I've done, project management has been at the core of it for the last 25 plus years.
Yeah, it's great.
And just the whole, that there's an art and a science to it.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, just trying to think. I think, I want to kind of wrap the story. 2012 comes and goes. I move out. I do the right things, and I'm still not talking. We're not talking. She doesn't want to talk to me. And then in August, I get this text message, and I'm reading this text message from the U.S. and it doesn't make any sense at all. It's like this garbled message, and I respond back, "Are you okay?" And a few days later, I get a message. Actually, no, I wasn't. I was actually really sick. I had a fever, and I think I texted you like. I said, well, since I got your attention, I want you to know I did, I know what I want. I know what I don't want. I know what I want. Can we start talking again? And we did. We started talking. And
did you need to be alone before that for a while?
I did, but I don't do very well alone. Even when I was alone, I would still often have, my son would come and stay with me for a couple nights and stuff like that, just so I wasn't walking around the house by myself. And that, so, and then once that conversation started, well, then I really felt like I wasn't alone. Like I was there by myself, but with FaceTime and stuff like that, you can have conversations. And so finally, I got the invite saying, "Hey, I'd like to come and see you." And yeah, it's time. You can come and see me. So it was October 30th, 2012. I left Ottawa about 5 p.m. to drive from Ottawa, Ontario to Solomon's Island, Southern Maryland, and drove all night, kind of said our hellos in the middle of the night, went to bed, and got up the next morning. It was Halloween 2012. And I said, "I know what I want to do. So will you marry me?" She said, "Yeah." So then from there, it was like, went kind of more strategic. All right, how do we get Brian into the U.S. full time? That's when it's all started to build.
Well, she played a big part in that, right?
She manned up the most out of all the players. It took a little bit, but it was, I shouldn't say it took a little bit, because she tried to man up a couple times earlier, and I kind of beat it down. Said, no, I'll take care of it. And then it wasn't until that was it. Go.
Where do you guys live now?
We live in Las Vegas now.
Vegas.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So yeah, we did some moving around just because of, the way things are working. When you get a work visa, you got to go wherever you can get the work. And that took us into the Twin Cities, St. Paul, for 2 years. Now, as a Canadian, I was pretty good with it, but as a gal that spent most of her summers in Southern California, she didn't realize that minus 25 was actually a temperature.
That'll hurt your feelings. That cold.
Well, it does, yeah.
So, How did The Secret Letters of the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma change your life?
It changed my life because it came at a time when I was lacking any kind of principles or guidance. And that book just goes through, it takes a broken man on a journey. It takes him through a journey to discover those principles. And as I was reading this, it was like watching myself go on this journey. He goes around the world and he meets with people, and they teach him, they teach him the lessons of living an authentic life, being, not being overcome by fear, being kind, all the different lessons. It takes him on a journey of that. And I felt like that was me the entire time. And when it got to the end of the book and he was starting to repair his relationship, for me, I knew what relationship needed to be repaired, and it wasn't the past one. That one had served its purpose. I got 2 beautiful children out of that. It served its purpose. I had to repair the relationship that led me to the marriage I have now, to the new family I have, and
That's beautiful.
And to the dad I am now, to all those kids.
Yeah, husband and dad, right?
Yep, and
both.
And Papa B to the grandkids. So yeah,
your job is to spoil the grandkids, right?
Well, I got to get beat out of the gate on that one. I think Mimi spoils them the most. But yeah.
It's great. Well, thanks for doing this. I know you already have I Am Leader, but we'll give you another one that you can give away to somebody.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.